Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country.
Americans are taught that the people who once lived in what we now call America were stewards of the environment. They had
an ancient respect and connection to the land and water.
Disney movies made that their message.
I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name.
No, I don't think Native American hunters gave names to every rabbit in the woods around them. No, that's not a real thing that happened.
Political science professor Wilfred Riley's new book is Lies My Liberal Teacher Told Me.
We've gone into almost this cult-like romanticization of the natives who were great warriors and poets, but who hunted buffalo by driving herds of them off of 100-foot-tall cliffs.
Yet government guides for teachers say Native Americans lived in harmony with nature. There was love of every form of life. They didn't kill anything they couldn't use.
That's just objectively untrue. That would mean no young male warrior, no brave ever killed for sport. We just know that's false.
I heard that. I believed it.
Well, I believed it too because I was 8.
The best-selling book, Lies My Teacher Taught Me, loved by teachers and students alike.
Riley's new book is a response to this hugely popular book. It correctly points out that American textbooks and media portrayed Columbus simply as a hero.
Land out! Hooray for Admiral Columbus!
Textbooks ignored Columbus's brutality and enslavement of Indians. Columbus himself wrote about his slaves, saying, "Indians make all our food, extract gold from the mines, and perform all other labors." The book was valid, right? Kids were being taught that Columbus is wonderful.
I don't necessarily think your focus should be white and native atrocities against one another in a 6th grade class.
Today, students are rarely taught that natives also took slaves and considered them objects of wealth.
The morality of today didn't exist anywhere in the world until about 60 years ago.
White people did murder the natives cruelly. What's the harm in sending a counter message?
You don't need a counter message. No one denies that whites and Native Americans killed each other. Sure, in 1970 in some southern schools, people might have been taught a jingoistic view of American history, but the reverse has been true for 40 years.
He says the old myths don't justify new ones like the ones spread by today's social media influencers.
We know firsthand how to live in harmony with the natural world. In fact, we did so since time immemorial.
In reality, natives manipulated their environment. To make farming easier, they set big forest fires to clear land.
Giant forest fires. You're burning alive hundreds of thousands of small animals, slower running deer. You're probably killing members of other tribes. You're modifying the environment more bluntly.
U.S. government curriculum guides also claimed there was no prejudice, no major wars.
Nonsensical. In the Aztec capital, there were 90-foot towers of human skulls that were brought back from their defeated enemies.
Yo, so we back in here for another edition of F-ya-Motha, and I didn't want to let y'all suffer through 2 more minutes of that bullshit, that malarkey. The jackass is actually talking, John Stossel, which I always thought was Geraldo Rivera. Either that or all white guys look the same. I don't know, you're thinking they're Hispanic, or Geraldo is Hispanic and this dude is white. Who cares? For some reason, I thought they was the same person. What I will say is that Elmer Fudd looking, and he looked like he biracial. What we had going on nowadays is a distortion of history. People want to rewrite shit. They're called revisionists. And even though that dude looks half black, he's a jackass. He sounds like he's Southern. So then there's that. Which I ain't putting that on Southern people. However, I cannot ignore the tremendous amount of stupidity that has come along since the South has actually had media focal point on them. Take that however you like. What I will say is that Elmer Fudd he don't seem too smart. He sounds like a dull knife in the drawer. He ain't that intelligent. One, to make a comparison on how Native Americans may have corralled the land, started forest fires, manipulated the landscape, killed animals and shit. I find the correlation between colonialism, antebellum slavery, and killing and working people to the bone, literally. This isn't a euphemism. Or using children as alligator bait, or using African slaves or Aboriginal people as, I don't know, focal points in zoos. How you make that correlation is something beyond me. My mind just, I'm just not that dense. Now, did they kill other Native Americans by manipulating the land and burning it? I'm probably sure. It wasn't maliciously or intentional, I don't think. And as far as the bones of skulls being found in ancient indigenous people artifacts, murder has always happened. Nobody's actually saying that. The brutality and the maliciousness of exploiting people as slaves actually transcends that. Because at least with death, you know where people stand. They killed you, it's over with, right? No suffering, no torture. People always try to make that correlation when they talk about African tribes. They warred with people, probably even took their land, right? They didn't enslave them. There's no history of slavery in Africa, unless it's the Arabs doing it to the Africans, but I digress. What I will say is, yeah, maybe the Aztecs did cut your heart out in a sacrificial ceremony or some shit like that, primitive rituals. I don't think that's along the lines of lynching people in front of a courtyard and why people watch and little kids smile and shit, or torturing and raping your slave, or doing experiments on them, transgender experiments back in the 1800s, or putting fecal matter in their mouth and sewing their mouth shut. These are all things that slave holders and slave masters did to their slaves. This is brutality, is slavery. This is suffering, torture. This is sadistic. Is not on the same level as Native Americans burning land, accidentally killing wildlife and other and plants and other tribes. I'm sure they weren't going in it with the intent, oh, we're gonna set them on fire, right? This is literally the disingenuousness that's going around amongst young people and old people. Now, the two jackasses in this video look like they're well into their 50s, if not 60s. They're kind of dumb and dense. Two sector of people that are not working with a full deck. I can honestly say people between 30 and 40 still got some semblance of common sense. It's just people within 50 and up and people 20 and younger. They're not working with a full deck. They do these 1 and 2 comparisons, comparing apples to oranges. It's not the same. Not only is it not the same, indigenous people didn't go to Europe and enslave Europeans. And as far as the indigenous people and the native white people killing each other, I'm assuming the indigenous people was killing the Europeans because they were trying to take their land, enslave their people, or maliciously scalp them. That's just me. I could be wrong. They just wasn't taking the bullshit lying down. But they wasn't going over to Europe. Now one can make the argument they didn't have ships or whatever. Inconsequential to the fact, because Ivan von Serma already proved that Africans and people from over in the Atlantic part of the world or eastern part of the world had already traveled to the western part of the world. And there's still no history of them enslaving, infringing on people's land, doing colonialism or slavery or just malicious sadisticness. So 1 and 2 comparison has got to stop. People are literally like not being intelligent or ingenuous or like honest with themselves. The Disney movies probably are off, but Columbus was a savage murderer. And until you have an indigenous person on the same scale as Columbus, you got to digress, as you should. In any event, if you like this video, it was informative. Even if you're a troll and you want to leave your racist comments down at the bottom, make sure you like the video and leave a comment, and I'm out.
No.